America is controlled by capital interests, okay? And a big part of that means that there has to be a forward operating base that is unsinkable in a resource-rich region. Here's another way that we are cucking ourselves.
Thought is a 100% grassroots funded operation. If you'd like to help support the channel, get early access to every video, and join the Discord, consider becoming a...
Could you explain how it's genocide, please? What? It amazes me how Democrats go after Trump and criminal trial, but not Netanyahu. Could you explain how it's a genocide? No, just Google it. YouTube. Go to my YouTube. It's for a friend. Okay, go to my YouTube, and you'll find the information there.
A patron at patreon.com/secondthought. Okay, here we go again. Draconian crackdowns on civil liberties part a lot. There's a new bill that, at time of writing, has passed the US House and is on the way to the Senate. Colloquially referred to as the anti-Semitism bill, you might be tempted to think, oh good, we're finally doing something about hate speech.
How do I respond?
Well, that is not the case.
There you go.
HR 6090, or the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, is once again a Trojan horse piece of legislation whose real intent is to make it illegal to protest the Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people. This is just the latest attempt by our corrupt and morally bankrupt ruling class to maintain the status quo. But that's not all it represents. Let's take a look at the bill. HR 6090 will be the first time a concrete definition of anti-Semitism is enshrined in US law. Again, at first blush, that sounds like a good thing. That is, of course, the point. By making the bill nominally about protecting Jewish people, a noble cause, it makes it very hard to criticize the rest of the bill. Here are some specifics. The definition in question is the one agreed upon in 2016 by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which is a group of 35 member countries, including the US and Israel. As a darkly funny side note, their homepage has in big bold letters, "A world without genocide." Anyway, the definition they came up with is pretty comprehensive, and includes some common sense things like, quote, accusing Jewish people of secretly controlling the world's governments is anti-Semitic. Good, that's great. Statements like those are genuinely anti-Semitic, and the people making them are generally acting in bad faith. However, the definition also includes the following. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g. by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor, and, quote, drawing comparisons.
The guy who literally came up with these definitions, obviously, by the way, very famously, is against it being used in any kind of legislation. So that's another funny part about this story. The guy who literally wrote the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has spent the rest of his life arguing against it.
Of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Okay, this is where we run into a slight problem, because the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. It has always, since its inception, been explicitly intended as a Jewish ethno-state. The only way they can do that is by getting rid of the Palestinian people.
I'm always eating because I'm famished after your mom all night. Like, I'm constantly dogging your mom's ass out. And it takes a lot of energy from me, you know? It's just blowing up her back walls. It requires a lot of stamina. So I'm carb maxing. Why? So that I can keep your mom and maybe even sometimes your dad every night, okay? F off. You're grounded.
People who have lived on the land for generations. It's no secret that Israel is a two-tiered society. There are roads and neighborhoods where Arabs cannot walk. There are invasive and humiliating checkpoints only for Arabs. The Israeli leadership routinely dehumanizes the Palestinian people, calling them human animals or children of darkness. Both direct quotes, by the way. None of this is secret knowledge. There have been articles and international legal reviews written for decades about Israel's apartheid policies. It's not like we don't have multiple precedents for these claims either. All we have to do is flip through a book about Rhodesia or apartheid South Africa to see the very clear similarities. So including in federal legislation a ban on calling Israel what it is, a racist apartheid regime, is absurd. Then there's that other part, not being allowed to compare Israel's actions to those of the Nazis. Again, this is kind of a problem, because no other regime on Earth shares as many similarities with Nazi Germany as Israel does. And that's not me being hyperbolic, it's objective fact. Show me any other country that sets up automated guns at checkpoints for one particular race, that forces over 2 million people into a concentration camp, refuses to let in food, water, medical supplies, or construction materials, that uses their concentration camp as a testing ground for new weapons. For example, Lavender, the AI system that marks Palestinian doctors, journalists, pretty much anyone they don't like for assassination, then waits for them to arrive home, then sends a drone to blow up their entire family. Show me a regime that speaks so openly about exterminating the subhumans.
Bro, you don't understand. It's really f***ed up. You can't say Israel's doing Nazi shit. You also, in the future, won't be allowed to say that, Palestinians are human beings, for example. You're just not allowed. It's f***ed up. Why? Because it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel bad about Israel's actions. You're only allowed to say it's good. What Israel's doing is good. Also, this dumbass, why is it anti-Semitic to say Jews secretly control the world? The U.S. is literally a real-life example. No, dumb f***. Jews do not control the United States of America. You want to know why it's anti-Semitic? Because one, Jews are not a monolith. There's a shit ton of Jews in this community. There are even Jews in this community from Israel who are anti-Zionist and understand the situation a lot better than you do, as your dumb ass is running around being anti-Semitic for no particular reason. Okay? I use this example quite frequently. I hope that you will understand it. I'm just going to be as charitable as possible. Okay? If all Jews in the United States of America tomorrow turned around and said, actually, Israel is a genocidal apartheid state, okay? Well, I'm not. I was simply questioning the initials. Man, shut the fuck up. Just stop talking for your own good and listen. No, you said something very anti-Semitic, okay? I yelled at you the other day, and I kept you in the chat because I thought maybe you can cook up something fun. This, I'm just simply asking questions, is idiotic. It doesn't work. If all Americans tomorrow, if all American Jews tomorrow said, hey, guess what Israel is doing is unconscionable, it's bullshit, okay? We are anti-Zionist. If all American Jews said that tomorrow, America's policy on Israel would not change, okay? It would not. There is a significantly larger number of American Christians than Jews across the board. Like all Jews on the planet, what is it? 12 million, 15 million total. The number of Christian Zionists in the United States of America that simply believe that Israel must exist in the way that it does for theological justifications, for triggering the Armageddon. Even the number of white evangelical Protestants who believe in the theological justifications for Israel is significantly larger than that. Okay? That logic is flawed. Pareto's law, 80% of output comes from 20% of input. Dude, listen, please don't try to Jordan Peterson Pareto principle your way out of this conversation and listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. I'm telling you that it does not matter. If literally 100% of American Jews were anti-Zionist, America would still do the same shit in Israel as it is doing so far. The reason for that is not because America is controlled by the Jews. The reason why I'm explaining this is because America is controlled by capital interests, okay? And a big part of that means that there has to be a forward operating base that is unsinkable in a resource-rich region. That's it. AIPAC and all these other vehicles that continue to make this relationship that is going to be undemocratic if necessary, make this relationship more palatable. Make it so that in times of need, when the American government or the American population, for example, is saying, okay, enough is enough, we got to put an end to this, AIPAC kicks in only in that situation. AIPAC kicks in and says, hey, we're going to dump $20 million to your re-election campaign against you, against your opponent, because against you for your opponent, because you have dared defy the interests of Israel. Okay? None of this conversation has anything to do with Jews in general. I hope you understand that. In the words of a very famous Russian guy who was bald, the animosity cultivated against the Jews is done by the capital owners, okay? It is not Jews that are the problem. It is capitalists that are the problem. There can be capital owning Jews, but they are still very much the enemy of working class Jews and all other members of the working class. Chatter, don't listen to him. We really do control the world in America, and we hold the world cabal Zoom meetings every Thursday. Okay, but like some of these dumb fucks do believe that shit. Okay, please. Also, Chaz, suck my dick. Can't even question statements without getting attacked. Yeah, bro, because the statement that you are questioning is like an inherently very damaging one. It is inherently bigoted. It's like coming in here and being like, I don't understand. Why are you claiming, like, why is it fucked up to say that black people have a bone in their skull that makes them servile? Like, I don't get it. You should be excited at the prospect of not being banned in this circumstance and being taken seriously and being talked to instead of immediately being banned for saying something that's like clearly anti-Semitic. I don't think this chatter is just asking questions from a 4chan way, by the way. If he does it again, I will ban him. Why are we entertaining this at all? Great question. The reason why I'm entertaining it is because, well, one, we're literally talking about a bill about anti-Semitism. And two, every now and then, I like to do a refresher, okay? I like to do a refresher on pretty common anti-Semitic opinions that people repeat, sometimes for very indecent purposes of propagandizing the anti-Semitic position, other times because they're duped. There is no issue that I will not try and talk chatters off of a ledge on, okay? And the reason for why I do that is because I'm certain that it is some chatters' first time in here, and given the fact that Israel ties in a defensive posture every single act, no matter how violent, to Judaism, there is always going to be people who are believing what Israel is saying, that they are doing this for Jews, right? This is a big part of how Israel promotes and spreads anti-Semitism. In an effort to combat that, I think it's fine every now and then to entertain someone who comes in here with anti-Semitic tropes and talk them off this cliff. Because even if it's not them, even if that person might be cynical, even if that person might be simply just asking questions in a way to do the classic 4chan shit, there are others who might not understand the situation, who are too afraid to ask these questions, so that they will also be walked off this cliff. You know what I mean? That's what it is. Because I promise you, outside of this community, outside of like the circles that we frequent online, there are so many people who do look at Israel and hear that Israel is saying like, oh, we're doing this for Judaism, and go, okay, what the well, what's up with these Jews, man? What's going on? It's a little weird, huh? And that's very scary. You don't, like, in prior circumstances, you had like anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine, right? It was so easy to identify someone being like an ideological fascist back in the day when they started doing JQ shit, right? Jewish question shit. Like, oh, what's up with these Jews, huh? Come on. Nowadays, there are plenty of people who are well-intentioned otherwise, who aren't like ideological committed fascists, who will also repeat the same type of anti-Semitism that you hear from a committed ideological fascist. That's terrifying. That means that anti-Semitism is rising, okay? A lot of people personally run around and repeat casual anti-Semitic bullshit. They do it because they don't understand it. And no one is sitting around and trying to talk to them and explain to them this shit without having like a severe bias in either direction. I am myself am biased as well. People can make up their own minds on this issue. But the real problem here is there are a lot of fascist opportunists out here that will point to what Israel is doing, point to how Israel defends itself by claiming that they're doing this for Judaism, only to turn around and be like, yeah, see, the Jews are controlling the media. Jews are controlling Congress. Jews are doing this for, they want to just kill people. They want to, you know, undermine the Palestinians and maybe even the Christians too. Okay, bro, we got it. You're a saint. People getting burned alive and motherfuckers focused on anti-Semitism for aesthetics. Yeah, dude, you're right, actually. Being anti-Semitic and betraying one of the foundational principles that I have will actually help the Palestinian cause better, especially as a Western commentator. Suck my dick, dumb f***. This guy's like, nah, dude, you don't understand. You have to be anti-Semitic to defend Palestinians. Shut up. My man said aesthetics, idiot.
You can't do
Yeah, bro. You saw the new anti-Semitism bill. According to our government, you do have to be anti-Semitic to defend Palestinians. This is true. According to the government's definition of anti-Semitism, I am being anti-Semitic, which is, once again, unironically proving exactly what I'm saying about Zionism being inherently anti-Semitic and also advancing the Nazi cause. both obviously, you know, the same kind of fascism that Nazis demonstrated against the Palestinians, but also like the anti-Semitic Nazi sentiment that is so exploitable in this moment. Like, think about it, bro. If you're a dumbass, and many of you were at a certain point, and many of you are still on other issues, myself included, we're all dumbasses, right? But if you're like a dumbass and you just see all of this shit and you're like, well, okay, I don't really know any Jewish people, and I'm seeing a lot of these Jewish people on television, and I'm seeing people just like, I'm seeing dead Palestinian children everywhere, and the Jewish representatives of Israel are saying we're doing this for Judaism, and I don't have anyone to check all of this information against, and I'm looking at the dead children, and I'm like, well, that's kind of fucked up. Why are Jews doing this? Is the immediate reaction you're going to have if that's all you're seeing, you know? Yeah, of course, this is how anti-Semitism grows, and then you're like, well, I have this like, you know, I have this opinion that this is not great. And then people are calling you an anti-Semite for saying like, yo, what's up? What's going on here? What are these Jews doing? Okay. Because you're dumb and you don't know, you are only responding to the stimuli that you're given. Okay. And then people are going to be like, okay, well, that's anti-Semitic because it is. Some people are obviously saying that because they don't recognize where that anti-Semitism is coming from. Right. So then they're further leaning on and negatively polarizing against Israel and also Jewish people too. That's why it's so crazy. Like, no one outside of ISIS was saying ISIS represents Islam. Okay. No one. And yet the media still was like, no, ISIS represents Islam. I promise. All Muslims believe this shit and they love it, right? And people still do that. And that's Islamophobic. The difference is Israel operates like ISIS. And there are people who defend Israel who say, no, Israel is doing this for Jews. Israel is doing this for Judaism. Some of those people are Jewish. Okay? It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like if every single Muslim living in the Western world was operating like a rabid fundy living in London, okay? Like a Wahhabist LARPer in London. You'd be like, what the f is happening? What is going on? Can women live, bro? Can women live and breathe the air that we are breathing? Or is that cheating? Bruv, let's discuss. No, brother. No one says that though, bro. I'm memeing about like some of these fundy London podcasts. They're hilarious in how aggro they are. And they're LARPing too. It's like Salafists in London getting mad at the Lebanese population for being, you know, multi-religious. Like, what's going on? These places, brother. These places. They've lost the way of Allah, brother. They've lost the way of Quran, brother. They got Christianity. They're celebrating Christmas, Christ Mass. Inshallah, one day we will reign supreme, brother. Wallahi, we will, brother. Someone said, Hasan, when did you unlock a South Asian London accent? Dude, these are my favorite podcasts, brother, bruv. These are my favorite podcasts, bruv. Listen. We are monolithic for Islam.
Anything about it rant for this episode. Now that we've got those 2 points out of the way, we need to talk about what this bill means for the...
Does anyone have Hassan Nasrallah talking about anti-Zionism, not anti-Semitism? I need to find that video. It's one of my favorite videos. When he starts talking about how, like, you know, some Arabs in the region, they think it's Jews. It's like, we do not have a war with Jews. We have a war with Zionists. And more importantly, we have a war with America.
Massive protest movement in the United States.
What? The only reason Israel exists because Zionists collaborated with Nazis? No, dude. What the f? The Havara Agreement is like so marginal. What the f? This is just ahistorical bullshit. You are telling an Israeli Jew who is infinitely more knowledgeable on you than this on this issue, time without an OVO, to read about the Havara Agreement. I already said it before you even brought that shit up. It is literally so marginal, so insignificant in comparison to the Balfour Declaration, in comparison to the Christian Zionist movement. Come on, dog.
نعم.
يعني إذا إسرائيل استهدفت إيران حتى ولو كان لوحدها.
أمريكا تتحمل مسؤولية هذا الاستهداف. في خطأ موجود بالعالم العربي بموضوع علاقات إسرائيل وأمريكا. وبنرجع بنعيد وبنرجع بنكرر وهاي اسمح لي أقول لك أكذوبة اللوبي الصهيوني، أنه اليهود هن حاكمين أمريكا وهن بياخذوا القرار وهن عاملين وهن مساويين ومشاكل. لا، أمريكا هي صاحبة القرار. بأمريكا في شركات كبرى، في مثلث ثالوث: شركات النفط، شركات السلاح، وما يسمى بالصهيونية المسيحية، هو أصحاب القرار. هذا التحالف. إسرائيل.
I can't believe I'm calling Nasrallah base. I mean, listen. You have to remember something, okay? A lot of these dudes, you see them in their fits and you hear about like some of their attitudes about like gay people, for example, and you immediately resort to Orientalist perspectives, not realizing that these motherfuckers are better read than you by a million, okay? Like it's not a broken clock situation. No, dude. Half of these dudes literally get educated in America and in the UK. What the fuck are you guys talking about? This is why it's Orientalist to literally look at these dudes and go, oh no, they're barbaric baboons. And like sometimes they get this shit right. No, dude, he knows. It's crazy. He's read more books than you could ever imagine. And also, ultimately, he is regarded as a pretty brilliant a person in terms of like everything that he's done. You might not agree with his methods. You might not agree with his attitude overall in terms of like his opinions on civil liberties and shit like that. But ultimately, this motherfucker has read a shit ton of books. Okay, chatter sounding like Blackthorn talking about the savages of the Japans. Exactly. Lol. He massacred civilians in Syria, dog. Not Orientalists if they caused atrocities to your people. But yes, America did a lot of shit and Russia did Syria. It did in Syria. Get it? I don't think you're understanding the point I'm making. This is Hasan Nasrallah. Hasan Nasrallah is, I believe, the general secretary of the Hezbollah, right? Dude, here's another great example. Bashar al-Assad, okay? He's a butcher in many respects. Well, I mean, I guess he's not a great example because he does wear the Western suit and tie. So, like, it's hard for people to see him as, like, a barbarian beyond, like, people. Like, he looks the part from the Western eyes. But Bashar al-Assad is literally an optometrist. Like, what are we talking about? This dude went to, didn't he go to Oxford or some shit? Like, these guys don't look the part and they portray themselves a certain way, okay? But in many circumstances, they are very well-read individuals, oftentimes coming directly from the institutions that you know are like, you know, pretty solid institutions of higher learning. Hassan is a cute-ass lisp in Arabic is crazy. What?
كانت في الماضي أداة بريطانية والآن هي أداة أمريكية.
Anyway, Hezbollah welcomes socialist allies. An interview with the leader of Hezbollah, Hasan Nasrallah, conducted shortly before a ceasefire by reporters from the Turkish Labor Party daily Evrensel. So I've never really gotten into this too much, but like the Turkish communist movement, like the real communist movement in Turkey, was basically synonymous with like not an ethno-nationalist, but like an ethno-nationalist in the early stages of developing national identities for marginalized populations under the Ottoman Empire, the Kurdish movement. Turkish Marxist-Leninism is basically tied to a lot of the Kurdish rebellions and the Kurdish Liberation Front. Turkish Marxist-Leninism is basically tied to a lot of the Kurdish rebellions and the Kurdish Liberation Front in general, and also historically very tied to the PLO. How can you be Turkish and wrong? However, there has always been revisionists, especially in a country as ultra-nationalist as Turkey, in terms of, this is a Turkish chatter, so I thought he was actually trying to do the classic, like, no, Kemalist socialists are valid, they're real, whatever. And instead of that, he just hit me with the top of the hour. Okay, good one. I'm gonna quit senin. Good. I really want to like Hezbollah and Nasrallah given the events of the last few months, but the Syrian is hard to forget or overlook some of the shit that happened in the civil war. You could say he fought and killed al-Nusra, but also a lot who got killed were local Syrian rebels who just wanted to overthrow the Assad regime, whereas Hezbollah were basically a foreign legion. Yeah, no, there's a reason why I don't touch the Syrian issue. You should also not touch the 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour, and the best way to do that is by subscribing for gonna be $6 soon, or for free with a Twitch Prime. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. My mom is Kurdish and my dad is Turkish. They were both in the TKP until they fled the country after Kenan Evren's coup. Look at this guy. This guy's a real ass commie piece of shit. Comes from a real ass commie piece of shit family. But yeah, it's really interesting that Arun was talking about how complicated India's history is against British imperialism, while simultaneously like LARPing, or simultaneously like owning British imperialism, or at least some aspects of British imperialism. I get that as a Turkish person who is, of course, understanding of the history of Turkey, like the Turkish Republic, and how it came to be. Look, he's talking about Deniz Gezmiş. Look, here, I'll read this, because he's talking to Turkish socialists here. The socialist movement, which has been away from the international struggle for a considerable time, at last has begun to offer moral support once again, for us once again. This is this guy, okay? So I need you to shake something. I need you to understand something. Western chauvinists, when I say you're a baboon in a suit, when I talk about Westerners, this is what I mean. I, of course, also adorn the garb of the Westerner, okay? Obviously, I'm Turkish. Having said that, however, given that I am from at least like that part of the world, or closer to that part of the world, I do understand that when someone dresses like this, I don't immediately assume that they're stupid and barbaric and antiquated, okay? Western chauvinists love wearing the suit and tie while doing barbaric nonsense, but the aesthetics of elitism and superiority is still there. Is like, and anyone that doesn't fit that stereotype immediately, it's hard for people to immediately recognize those people as like well-read, educated people. Okay? Thank you, Mehtakar, for the 50 community gifted subs. No, I'm not saying you're LARPing. I'm saying Indians are LARPing as like the Indians that we talked about, like the Indian fascists that we talked about yesterday, who like LARP as British colonialists, but also have a complicated history with British colonialism, where they literally will be like, oh, you guys are British bootlickers, but also simultaneously will be themselves. British bootlickers themselves. Why is this credentials question? Because this is a Western audience. And in a Western audience, when you see a motherfucker that looks like this, you don't assume that this dude is well-read. Meanwhile, when you hear the way he speaks about certain things, you understand. You might not agree with some of the shit that he's done, okay? But it is not even a question that he's incredibly well-read. So is Bashar al-Assad. That was simply the point I was making. Assad is not a great example, however, because like he does dress up in the Western garb. This does not mean that he does not hold on to dogmatic opinions when it comes to Islam, which he certainly does. Okay, especially when it comes to social progress. Anyway, the most concrete example of this has been Hugo Chavez, the president of Venezuela. What most of the Muslim states could not do has been done by Chavez with the withdrawal of Venezuela's ambassador to Israel. He furthermore communicated to us his support for our resistance. This has been an immense source of moral strength for us. We can observe a similar reaction within the Turkish revolutionary movement. We had socialist brothers from Turkey who went to Palestine in the 1960s to fight against Israel. This is true. And one of them still remains in my memory and in my heart. Deniz Gezmiş. Deniz Gezmiş, 1947 to 1972, was a Turkish revolutionary in the ML tradition. He led major student actions in the late 60s, went to a Fatah training camp in Lebanon in the late 1969, returned to Turkey where his group seized 4 U.S. Army privates in Ankara. Now one must ask the question, what the fuck were U.S. Army privates doing in Ankara? Well, that's because Turkey is a NATO nation, and we have many American bases. After the release of the soldiers, Gezmiş was captured, tried for attempting to overthrow the Turkish state, and with 2 of his comrades was hanged in the central prison in Ankara on May 6, 1972. What is the importance of Deniz's for you? We now want new Deniz's, like multiple Deniz Gezmiş's. Our ranks are always open to new Deniz's against the oppressors. Deniz will always live in the hearts of the peoples of Palestine and Lebanon. No one should doubt this. Unfortunately, there is no longer a common fight and fraternity against the common enemy left over by the Deniz's. What we would have liked is for our socialist brothers in Lebanon to fight against imperialism and Zionism shoulder to shoulder. This fight is not only our fight, it is the common fight of all those who are oppressed across the world. Don't forget that if the peoples of Palestine and Lebanon lose this war, this will mean the defeat of all oppressed people of the world. In our fight against imperialism, the revolutionaries should also undertake a responsibility and should become, in the hearts of our people of Palestine and Lebanon, Deniz's once again. It is possible to see the posters Che, Chavez, Ahmadinejad side by side in the streets of Beirut. Are there signs of a new polarization? We salute the leaders and the peoples of Latin America. They have resisted the American bandits heroically. American bandits. This is from Marxist.org. Talking to an interview conducted with Hezbollah leader Hasan Nasrallah, talking to Turkish Labor Party reporters in Evrensel, the Turkish Labor Party paper. You can tell it's leftist by design. Exactly. You can tell it's a leftist paper or a leftist website by the shitty graphic. Great. Another Hassan saying America bad. Yeah. Che, Chavez, Ahmadinejad. One of them is not like the others. Okay, listen. Yeah. Nasrallah is right on this, and he's extremely smart. I'm pretty sure the guy's also a Holocaust denier. I don't know. I mean, he could be. I 100%. That would not shock me at all if he was. Like I said, you know, I mean, he is. You might be mistaking him with Ahmadinejad, who has famously put together the Holocaust denial conference, which was, from what I understand, literally. I think you might be mistaking him with Ahmadinejad. Yeah, he did. Ahmadinejad famously put together Holocon, which apparently at the time was even regarded as a bridge too far by Iranians who were like, bro, what the is this? But yeah, let's see. I don't know. There's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs paper, excerpts from the speech by Hezbollah Secretary General Nasrallah. Hezbollah leader Nasrallah implementing Khomeini's fatwa against Salman Rushdie would have prevented current insults to Prophet Muhammad. Great French philosopher Garudi proved Holocaust a myth. If any Muslim had carried out the fatwa of Imam Khomeini against the apostate Salman Rushdie, those despicable people would not have dared to insult the Prophet Muhammad. Not in Denmark, not in Norway, and not in France. And today we need to take a different position regarding Denmark. For example, a few years ago, the great French philosopher Roger Garudi wrote a scientific book. He did not offend, curse, or insult anyone. He wrote a scientific research of an academic nature in which he discussed the alleged Jewish Holocaust in Germany. He proved that this Holocaust is a myth. The great French philosopher Roger Garudi, he said, Hasan Nasrallah said this? The god of these people is the currency of dirham and dinar, and therefore they call to boycott the products of any country that allows its newspapers to offend our prophet is correct, and we shall not allow it. I mean, it's memory, so it might be, suspiciously sourced. It's memory TV, but if there is like a direct clip, like I said, he might be. We know memory TV is a Zionist propaganda network. I know. There's a clip on the mobile side, but not on the PC one. Memory's sus always, so I'm trying to send the clip. Anyway, I mean, even in this clip alone, he's literally saying that there is a common misconception prevalent in the Arab world regarding Israel-U.S. relations. This is also from Memory TV. We keep repeating this lie about the Zionist lobby. That the Jews rule America and are the real decision makers and so on. No, America itself is the decision maker. In America, you have the major corporations. You have a trinity of the oil companies, the weapon industry, and the so-called Christian Zionism. The decision making is in the hands of this alliance. Israel used to be a tool at the hands of the British. And now it is a tool in the hands of America. Secretary General Hasan Nasrallah, the U.S. can force Israel to do anything. Arabs invented the joke that the Jewish lobby controls America in order to excuse their financial ties with the U.S. and they're refraining from fight from Israel. That's so funny. He's saying that Arabs that wanted to collaborate with America basically said, no, you don't understand. It's actually the Israeli lobby that dominates. It's actually the Jews that dominate America. I mean, I also don't disagree with what he's saying. I often will talk about, obviously, AIPAC and the Zionist lobby, but will always tell you it is far beyond that the Zionist lobby alongside the NRA, for example, alongside many of these institutions, are not capable of like legitimately changing the status quo, which is why you can't lobby the American Congress and turn them socialist. Okay. It's a laughable notion. The money corresponds to the moneyed interest and is there in times of need. Okay. Right now is a time of need. Right now, AIPAC is working desperately round the clock to ensure that American congresspersons don't fuck up and, don't speak out of turn. And if they do speak out of turn, if they do speak against the American State Department interests, that they will turn around and punish them. Jamal Bowman is a great example of this, okay? But they are not personally changing someone's mind dramatically. It's like if a pro-union guy receives 50K campaigns dollars from the UAW, it's not a bribe if you agree with it. Yes.
بأكد كل اللي كنا نقوله سابقا انه لا الامريكان بس بدهم شغله يوقفوها بيوقفوها. انه الامريكي ما بيقدر يفرض على الاسرائيلي، هذا حكي فاضي. لو في هيك نظريات انه اسرائيل هي حاكمه امريكا، لا حبيبتي، امريكا هي
No, sir. It is America that controls Israel.
اللوب اليهودي
The story about the Jewish and the Zionist lobby is, forgive me for saying this,
هاي ما تواخذوني نكتة عربية,
a joke invented by the Arabs so they do not have to fight Israel.
العرب ما يقاتلوا إسرائيل. وحتى يروحوا على أمريكا.
They do this so that they can go to America, deposit their money there,
ويحطوا فلوسهم بأمريكا ويعملوا علاقات مع أمريكا
and establish relations with America under the pretext that they are establishing an Arab lobby
لننافس اللوب اليهودي
in order to compete with the Jewish lobby. After 75 years, we can see what came out of the Arab lobby.
شو طلع مع اللوب العربي؟ غير إنه الأموال العربية كلها.
The Arab money is piling up in the American coffers, but that's it.
كدسي في الخزائن الأمريكية.
He's shitting on like Saudi Arabia and all these other Arab countries that collaborate and work with America. Anyway, so yeah, we salute the leaders and the peoples of Latin America. They have resisted the American bandits heroically and have been a source of moral strength for us. They're guiding the way for the oppressed peoples. Go and wander around the streets. You will witness how our people have embraced Chavez and Ernesto Che Guevara. Nearly in every house, you will come across posters of Che or Chavez. What we are saying to our socialist friends who want to fight together with us for fraternity and freedom is, do not come at all if you're going to say religion is an opiate. We do not agree with this analysis. Here's the biggest proof in our streets with the pictures of Chavez, Che, Sadat, and Khomeini together. These leaders are saluting our people in unison. So long as we respect your beliefs and you respect ours, there is no imperialist power we cannot defeat. I, of course, do not agree with religious fundamentalism, nor do I agree with, the way that Iran conducts its affairs against its own population. Same with Turkey. Returning to threats in the region, Western governments are intensifying their pressure on Damascus and Tehran, for which they are proposing a change of regime. Some sources are of the view that an attack on Lebanon will be directed on Syria. According to our point of view, is a regional war possible? There are claims that Hezbollah is directed by Tehran. What are your views on this issue? This is a great lie. We're an independent Lebanese organization. We do not take orders from anyone. But this does not mean that we are not going to form alliances. We are on the side of Iran and Syria. They are our brothers. We are going to oppose any attack directed at Tehran and Damascus to the last drop of our blood, just as we do in Lebanon. We uphold global resistance against global imperial terrorism. Wait, Sadr was good. Khomeini doesn't belong. Che had questionable beliefs. What? Bro, you're saying Khomeini doesn't belong. Fair. But Che? The That's insane. In any case, I don't even remember why we went down this. Oh, I was simply trying to talk about Orientalist framework. Fundamentals, Muslims have killed their fair share of leftist/communists. Oh, absolutely, including the now former president of Iran. My attitude always has been that, unfortunately, Western involvement in the affairs of Middle Eastern countries have almost always left these countries with more fundamentalist more fundamentalist rule. either directly as a consequence of Western intervention, propping up fundamentalists as a counterbalance to the scarier secular Arab nationalist socialists, okay, or Iranian socialists, or sometimes purged the fundamentalist groups have been able to purge the nation of Western imperialism and therefore seen as the, you know, rightful rulers of the land and the best uncorruptible elements. Like the only people that you can trust, against Western imperialism. Mossadegh wasn't overthrown by Khomeini. That's not what I'm saying at all. What are you talking about? Iran is a perfect example of Western influence, America specifically, and the British, destroying a country for the crime of wanting to be a sovereign nation, wanting to have sovereignty over their own oil supply, their own natural resources. Bro, nationalist, socialist, what the fuck? Well, no. Arab nationalism is very different. German National Socialism is very different than Pan-African nationalism or national movements as a post-colonial movement. Nation states were being formed for these countries. Nationalist movements were a way to create a nation state. Nationalism in that sort is very different than nationalism when you are already an established colonial state. This is something that a lot of Americans or a lot of Westerners don't recognize or understand. That's why they immediately take this like approach where they go, oh, these guys are nationalists. Well, that's a scary word. It is. It is a bad word in the West because in the West, nationalism implies fascism. Nationalism, when you are talking about a nation that is not subject to colonial violence, that is not a colony, is simply just fascism. Yeah, Cuban nationalism under Fidel is revolutionary and ends colonial violence. Let's finish this.
This is the University of Texas in Austin. Again, more protests.
The driving force behind the bill is the student protest happening on campuses across the country. What started at Columbia University as an outspoken demonstration against genocide has quickly spread to schools in every state in the country. As militarized police beat students demanding divestment from Israel, weapons manufacturers, and an end to the genocide, the protest grew into a full-fledged anti-imperialist movement to rival the Vietnam War protests. This student movement has become a cultural schism. On one side, we see young people of all races, creeds, and backgrounds uniting with principled university staff, human rights workers, journalists, historians, and normal, decent people to demand an end to the most obvious genocide in modern history. And rising up against them, we see violent police, frat boys, Zionist agitators, weapons manufacturers, corrupt university officials, and politicians bought by the pro-Israel lobby. There's good news and bad news in this mini-civil war. On the bright side, normal, decent people opposed to genocide vastly outnumber the ghouls supporting it. On the other hand, the minority, the increasingly fascist US government, and their unholy merger of state and corporate power are the ones with all the tools at their disposal to win. They know they can never win the hearts and minds of the people, so as they have many times before in this country's history, they weaponize the legal system to make the fight unwinnable for the rest of us. That's where this bill is coming from. If it's anti-Semitic to gather and say, what Israel is doing is wrong and amounts to apartheid, or Israel is committing genocide, then it'll be the easiest thing in the world to send in the police, round up the protesters, and throw them in jail. Make decency a crime, and suddenly we're all criminals. We don't have a say in the matter. The only people who do are the ones committing the genocide, funding the genocide, and building weapons for the genocide. That doesn't sound like a legitimate government to me. But something else that's important to note is that the legal system is not a moral system. Legal does not mean right. Illegal does not mean wrong. Slavery was legal. Segregation was legal. What Rosa Parks did, refusing to give up her seat for a white man, was illegal. Was she wrong? No. The law was wrong. The only thing this new bill will do if it becomes law, which it probably will be to justify mass arrests and fascist crackdowns on protests against this deeply illegitimate regime. Fascism isn't always goons marching with American flags. In fact, that's the least threatening form of fascism. The real threat is when neoliberal politicians, and that includes both Republicans and Democrats, feel threatened by a rising tide of class consciousness and turn their imperialist tendencies inward. This has been an ongoing process for a long time, but it's really begun to accelerate as the US position as the global hegemon continues to slip. So when this bill becomes law, and the next one, and the next one, and more expressions of discontent and righteous anger become illegal, remember that the morality of those protests hasn't changed. Speaking out against genocide is still the morally correct thing to do, no matter how hard the suits and talking heads try to spin it. I don't know about you, but I can't think of a single instance in history where crushing dissent to make it easier to fund a genocide has been the right thing to do. That's usually a pretty good indicator that the people doing it are the bad guys. The United States, Israel, all the US's little vassal states in Western Europe, they're the bad guys. The people on the receiving end of the occupation and apartheid and genocide, they're the good guys. Heck, you don't even have to think they're the good guys. They're just the guys. People trying to live on their ancestral land in homes their families have lived in for generations and resisting their execution by an occupying force. And here we get to an important piece of psychology for all of us in the West. Resistance. What is it? How is it portrayed in the media, in popular culture?
It's the resistance.
Well, it's actually kind of interesting, because in every piece of media where there's an empire or a bigger army or an occupying force and then a resistance, who are the good guys? The resistance. And yet, in real life, when actual people oppose the empire, whether it's the British, French, or US empire, those same people, the resistance, are labeled terrorists. They're the bad guys. Why is it that we can identify with brave resistance fighters in movies, but not in real life? Even in Star Wars, one of the most famous series of all time, we're able to side with the rebels against a sci-fi depiction of our home country.
The irony of that one is, in both of those, the little guys won.
Right.
And the big, highly technical empire,
The English Empire, right?
the English Empire, the American Empire,
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
That was the whole point.
Is it just because it's fantasy? The good guys are presented as the good guys? The good guys look and sound like us? Yeah, that's probably a big part of it. Another part of it is good old white supremacy and American exceptionalism. For the entire existence of the United States and the entire colonial period of the Western empires, white people would show up in some exotic land, butcher and subjugate the people, and would somehow convince everyone back home that anyone who resisted these invaders were terrorists. It's the oldest trick in the imperialist book. It is exactly the same with Israel and Palestine. A Western...
When are you going to comment on the imminent war of NATO against Russia in Europe? I'm German chatter. Soon they are sending me to the front. What? What the? Oh no. Don't do it, brother. Dessert. Leave. Yes, for sure, man. Drop a sledgehammer on your toe. Yeah, that is a definite thing that people did back in the day. This is a real thing in Germany. A lot of mania about getting sent to the front lines. Wait, really? Asking a German to break the rules is obviously going to be impossible. I'm asking for you to do something impossible. I know. You go against your German imperative. My sister lives in Germany. They think shit's about to pop the fuck off over there. No, this chatter is correct. Macron has been like signaling that he wants to send French troops into Ukraine for quite some time. And even America has actually removed some of the rules of engagement restrictions that they'd placed upon the Ukrainian military in terms of hitting inside of Russian soil. Germany is definitely militarizing and has been aggressively militarizing for the past decade, especially. Definitely kicked into high gear since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We're at the precipice of Russia wouldn't make it past Poland. Russia wouldn't make it to Poland. That's crazy. The issue is like, does the comfortable European nations have the smoke to defend NATO that hard? The Foreign Legion is already in Ukraine. Yeah, that doesn't count. That's not what I'm talking about. The Reddit Legion is already in Ukraine. dude, I don't know. I don't know what will happen. Okay. I don't know what will happen as far as like an escalation between two states that have nukes. Russia said yesterday they will strike French targets in Ukraine after France said they can use their weapons to strike Russian civilians. America has also removed those restrictions. Are you optimistic about the next 50 days? No. I am just going to say I am very, very scared about the future of Europe for this principle and this principle alone. Because, yeah, they didn't say Russian civilians. Yeah, of course they didn't say Russian civilians. That guy is saying Russian civilians because Russian civilians will die if Ukraine starts targeting inside of Russian soil. Normally, Europe waits till someone gets to Poland. This is crazy to Europe. They're defending the Polish. This is how you know it's serious. I wouldn't say they're defending Poland, more so that they're defending what America wants them to defend. You say Russia won't make it to Poland, but don't forget they got China and North Korea behind them. Listen, I personally will always be cautious when making predictions about what Russia might do and what the Western world might do against what they perceive is what Russia is going to do. Don't fearmonger, please. We are good. It's the same for the last few years. No, I don't think it's the same for the last few years for one reason. Okay. No, not a German with that view would never find your channel. They vote AFD. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't think it's the same as it is for the last couple of years because Russia has made a shit ton of gains in Ukraine. That's number one. It has been very costly. It's been very bloody. And Ukraine is like the Ukrainian defenses are damn near done at this point. Draft restrictions have been lowered. People are getting arrested to go fight in the front lines against their will. That is not a good sign. Ukraine not only desperately needs weapons, okay, but they also need people. What that means is if they don't have enough people, the other countries, the Western backers of Ukraine can either literally forcibly deport Ukrainian men back to Ukraine, or they can send their own militaries into Ukraine. Both are politically troublesome things to engage in. And I do not know what will happen, but things are definitely different. They said on every step of the way, we're going to nuke UN, weapons from the West, tanks, fighter jets. They did. Also, a German wouldn't spell Ukrainians. Lamau, it's a K in German. I don't think it's a C anywhere. Not to mention the money is ran dry. PMC offers have declined steeply. I first saw offers for 1K a day, now to 1K a week. CD Projekt Red and Larian Studios are now in Poland. We can't let it fall. I agree. 50% of Ukrainians, according to the Kyiv Independent, think Zelensky failed to fulfill all or most pre-election promises, survey shows. Sociologists interviewed 1,002 respondents from all Ukrainian oblasts that are not under Russian occupation. The participants of the survey were asked to what extent Zelensky has fulfilled his pre-election promises during the 5 years in office. Nearly 18% of respondents think the president fulfilled most or all of his promises, while 5% saying he had fulfilled all of them. About 19% of the respondents think that Zelensky fulfilled more than half of his promises, while 50% of the participants said he failed to fulfill most or all of his pre-election promises. Dishonest and corrupt people in his team was the top reason Zelensky failed his promises. Lack of competent people in the team, Russia's full-scale invasion, Zelensky's inexperience and lack of competence, influence of oligarchs. Nearly 10% of the respondents said that the influence of other countries obstructed the president's activity, while 10% of the participants mentioned Ukrainian political opposition. What political opposition remains in Ukraine, I do not know. Around 14% of the respondents said that Zelensky's own corruption was to blame. The respondents recalled the president's promises, ending the war in the Donbass region, fighting corruption, and improving welfare of the population. Repelling Russian aggression is considered to be Zelensky's main success, Hrushetsky added, citing the results of the survey. Ukraine's Zelensky Qatari Emir discussed how to end war, Qatari news report says. This is from today. Now, male dual citizens of U.S., Canada, etc. are banned from leaving Ukraine and can be conscripted by force with de facto U.S. West approval. U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, men with dual citizenship will no longer be able to leave the country. Holy The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine has warned that Ukraine has revoked the residence abroad exception that previously allowed certain Ukrainian men between the ages of 18 and 60 to leave the country. With this change, men with dual citizenship, including those living in the U.S., will no longer be able to leave the country. Oh, brother. That was weird as No, it's not Spectrum. It's not Spectrum. I checked. I'm 600 down, 40 up. That's like pretty high for me. It wasn't Spectrum. It's Twitch. Because I was checking on my end what my upload speeds look like. And 40 up is like pretty good for me. I don't know why though, because it shows as it doesn't show as drop frames on my end, but instead shows as like no internet. 40 up is the max for most cable providers nationwide. I know it's dog water, man. Shut up. Okay, stop. Stop telling me shit I know already. Okay, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear things that I know already. Anyway, there's a chatter. Asking in good faith, do you not see the Ukrainian struggle against an oppressive occupier as an equally just war that should be supported? Ideally, we would want the West to treat Palestinians like they've treated Ukraine. No, their conflict is existential, though in a different way than those in Palestine. No, there's a key difference here. The aggressors, like if America was funding and facilitating Russia in the same way that it is Israel, it would be an entirely different equation. As far as the Ukrainian emancipatory cause goes, yes, it is just as the Palestinian one. It's not as obviously the historical wrongs are nowhere near as bad, considering that Ukraine had a state, a nation state, albeit one that was in the throes of corruption for damn near the entirety of its existence. The Ukrainian emancipatory cause is just 100%. They have every right to rid their nation state of Russian invaders. Okay? The problem, however, just what? No, like a just cause. It is just. The issue here is that America is the major player that wants Ukrainians to fight a losing war down to the last Ukrainian because they're fighting against America's foreign adversary. It's a great way to just offload a shit ton of old surplus military equipment. Okay? This presents a unique problem. The unique problem is that the calculation all of a sudden means that, you know, everything that you're seeing like this is going to continue happening in Ukraine because the larger power player here has no appetite for peace or a cessation of hostilities. Obviously, the cessation of hostilities could happen any moment if Russia just simply chose not to continue invading. But when the major power player on the one side has no real interest in saving the lives of as many Ukrainians as possible, they keep making false promises to the Ukrainians like, no, you got this. We got you. I promise. Keep it going. War to the last Ukrainian also means war to almost the last Russian, and that's a sacrifice NATO is willing to do. Yeah. Russia cannot accept NATO in Ukraine. Yeah, the real problem here is that NATO is not accepting NATO in Ukraine. Do you not understand that? Why would NATO care about Russians? Ultimately, I mean, I don't think they care about like killing Russians if that's what you're saying, because that's its reason for existing. No, NATO doesn't exist because of anti-Russian sentiment. NATO exists as a protection racket, with Russia being the Soviet, the USSR being the reason as to how they engage with this protection racket. This protection racket also has genuine consequences for the countries that have allowed NATO to operate inside of its borders. Domestic policy changes, but ultimately it is not simply about defending Europe from Russian orcs or whatever the Russia in the way that it currently exists is a kleptocratic oligarchy led by a madman, a corrupt multi-billionaire psycho. He himself uses his own version of a ultra-nationalistic mythos about a greater Russia, oftentimes utilizing USSR imagery, but not the actual ideology, but simply the power that the USSR represents. Dude, there was so much migrant shit that we were supposed to cover today, and I'm just like so tired. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's the bad dreams that I had last night. Celtic's son or Maverick's daughter? Maverick's daughter. I ain't trying to have a racist son, bro. Anyway, I'm done for today. I apologize. You always pick the daughter. That's not my fault that people always give the better option to the daughter.